So I'm gonna share. Is this mic working? Yes. Okay. A video that I came across by Dr. Siegel, and he's describing the power of the adolescent mind. And it's my understanding that as a species, we're in our adolescent years, and that's why the language and everything that's going on around us feels like school. Like everybody's all of a sudden saying, again, I'm in school, feels like I'm in school. So when you're listening to this lecture, put that in your mind, as if he's not talking about a teenager so much as what the elites have learned about the human condition, behavior, species. And if I'm right, and we are in the neo period of adolescence, remember that's the one who picks the girl, not his friends like the other neos. Then hint, hint, we're teenagers. Hint, hint, this is our Shemitah, is really our bar mitzvah, or our 666, 6, 12, 18 years, I'm a man. That's what we're looking at. So when you're listening to this, have that in your mind, and then listen. Don't think teenager, think species, because this is what the bad guys know about us and how we react to things. And they use that as a weapon against us. So there you go. Here we go. Listen.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to come to join with you, bless you, tonight. In fact, let's have a bless you for everyone's going to sneeze. Bless you.
You're welcome.
We have the evening to spend together to talk about adolescence as individuals and adolescence as a period of time of our growth. So let me just check out with you. How many of you once were adolescents? Let me just see. Raise your hand if only half the people are raising their hand. That's interesting. Now, last night I spoke at another set of schools, and we had a number of adolescents here. I don't know if we have adolescents. Do we have any students here tonight? Okay, we have. Raise your hand really high if you're here. Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome. Let's hear it for adolescents. So I will be making these remarks about the adolescent period, but as you can see, all of us once were or still are adolescents, although maybe we have anyone younger than adolescents here. Yes, good. How old are you? You're 8. Okay, cool. Well, when adolescence begins, you'll be a little bit older than 8. So you can just listen up for what's going to happen in the future. So here's the interesting thing. What animals, besides human beings, have an adolescent period? Does anyone know? Elephants, dogs, exactly. Actually, most mammals do. So it's not just something we invented here in California to just keep us kind of puzzled or something. It's actually an important period in mammalian development. And so I want you to think about, why would we have a period of time that's distinct from childhood? We have an 8-year-old here. So it's distinct from being 8, and it's distinct from being 38. We have a period of time that's roughly about the second dozen years of life, more or less. So it's not just the same as the teenage years. That is a special period of time that is different from childhood and different from adulthood. So the simplest way of defining this period of time is it's the period of development between childhood dependency. Like, do you depend on your mom? Is that your mom next to you? Or did you come on your own? That's your mom? Great. So would you say that you depend on your mom for stuff like getting you here or taking you to school, things like that? Yeah, and that's pretty natural. When we're kids, we depend on our parents, right? And that's great, right? So in childhood, we're very dependent, and in adulthood, we have a lot of responsibilities, don't we? And so adolescence is that transition between childhood dependency and adult responsibility. And in the old days, it started around, about 200 years ago, it started around in human beings, around 15 or 16 years of age for females, a little bit older for males, and then it ended around 18 or 19. So it was a very short adolescent period we used to have. And now it goes on from about 12 or so to about the mid 40s, right? So it goes on. So it goes on and on. And so we have a couple beliefs about this period of life. And I'm going to start with the myths. So if you're taking notes, these are the things that are wrong, but you hear them all around this planet. The adolescent period, people say, is caused by raging hormones. Exactly. And I have interviewed many endocrinologists and said, is there anything called a raging hormone? And the answer is no. There's no such thing as hormones, which are chemicals in your body which influence how the body functions, that have anger management problems. They just don't exist like that. But everyone around this world says the phrase raging hormones. So the first myth is raging hormones. Now, you may say, well, if it's not raging hormones, what is it? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, if you're an adolescent in the room, I want to say to you that these myths are very disempowering.
We make a product to drink before bed. It's called Rest. Why would a company that makes a...
And I want you to think about it. If someone says to you, and for our 8-year-old, and I've been with like parents of 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds, and they said, oh, I'm so nervous. My 8-year-old is going to become an adolescent and he's going to be taken over by raging hormones. And the 8-year-old will look at me like, oh my God, right? So if you believe that changes in what you are these raging hormones, what can you do about that? Nothing, right? Nothing. So luckily it's a lie, but it's a disempowering lie, because if you believe it, you will believe there's nothing you can do about your adolescent period. So this is the first thing. The second thing is that people will say things like, your teenager is crazy, or your adolescence is nuts, or, you know, what are the other insulting things people say about adolescents? What's that? They're out of control. What else? Lazy, crazy, out of control. Exactly. All these things that are said, they're really kind of nasty. And even if you read some of the books written for parents of adolescents, if I were an adolescent reading those books, I would feel incredibly insulted. And they're actually filled with a lot of lies also. So what happened to me, I'm trained as a scientist. I study the way parents interact with children and how that affects healthy development, called attachment research. And I'm also trained as a physician, and initially a pediatrician, and then a psychiatrist, and then a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So as a clinician, what I found was that these statements that were commonly stated were really serious violations to what was scientifically accurate. And then as a parent, because I have 2 kids, one is 22, the other is 27, a daughter and a son, and they were going through their adolescent period, and what our friends who also had adolescents were saying, and what our pediatrician even said, we're playing out wrong. And as our kids went through their teen years and their later adolescence, because adolescence goes into the mid to late 20s, it really struck me that someone ought to clarify for adolescents themselves and their parents what the truths were. So adolescents are not lazy, crazy, and all those other insulting things. The third myth that is said is that adolescence is such a terrible period of time, you want to get through it as fast as possible. And if you're lucky, you'll make it out alive and not with a jail record. That's actually what the head of nursing at some major university told me. When my kids were not adolescents, she said, oh, if they make it out alive and don't get in jail, that'll be the best. And, you know, I understood she had a difficult time, but here's the issue, that these views of the adolescent period, like you're supposed to get through it, are actually exactly the opposite of what science shows, as you'll soon see. That there's something very important about the adolescent period of life that isn't only important for adolescents, but it's important for us as adults, believe it or not, to actually hold on to the essential features of adolescence. And there's certain incredible potentials of adolescence that our society, our schools, and our families are actually not supporting. It's a huge human resource that is being wasted by the present setup we have. And so this is actually pretty serious for you who have adolescents yourself, or that is, your children are now in that period of time, or if you're an adolescent yourself, to really gain a perspective about what this is all about. So we're going to talk about that essence of adolescence in just a moment. The fourth and final myth we'll just address here is that, so that third myth was get over adolescence as soon as possible. It's actually just the opposite. Hold on to your adolescence, and you'll actually have a healthier brain, as you'll see.
Okay, I'm gonna pause it here for a minute because I want to talk a little bit as he's going along. This is what I understand to be happening, is that our species is in its adolescent stage, and here we are. I'll make that bigger. This is my little picture here. right? And we're in this red zone, this adolescent zone. We've come out of our contemporary time, our school age zone. We've come out of the time of Santa Claus, the Industrial Revolution. We've come out of, tooth fairies and Santa Claus and fairy tales and all of this. We've learned all there is to know about the world, right? There isn't really much left for us, except now we're in biology class. So now we're dissecting the cats. We're not just learning about their parts. So now we're at the dissecting stage. We want to go in, it's not just good enough. Our science fair projects are becoming far more advanced, is what I'm saying there. And here we are in our adolescent stage as a species. And he's talking about, this isn't about hormones and stuff. And there's so much more that goes on during this stage, the way that we understand the world and the way that the world gets presented to us, that in the future is detrimental. In other words, if we don't have a good environment by the time we reach the age of man, we're fucked. We're not going to do well. And they know that. And that's why I say I think our controllers clearly have an idea that maybe we're in our teenage years. They're also in their teenage years, and they may or may not know what I'm presenting here, but I felt like I got a little snippet of their playbook, because this means that they can predict our behaviors based off of a layer of the onion we've never even considered. So nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about this. So as we continue to listen to him, keep hearing that in your mind. Keep hearing, what stage are we in here? We got a big question mark. Because now, and when he says you have to keep some form of that adolescence, right? The reason that's important there, think about it. That puts us on things like Peter Pan. That puts us on movies like Stand By Me. That puts us with the Rites of Passage. That puts us with our bar mitzvahs and things. These are, specific things. And we're not doing so well right now. And maybe that's because they know. I don't know if they know, but nonetheless, I know. And I'm sharing, because then maybe more people will know how they're pulling this off, is really what I'm saying, in a way that I've never heard anyone else be so blunt about. So no more tippy-toeing. Listen to this brainstorm. Peter Pan's in my, yes. Exactly. Oh my God, G-Sharp. Yes. Hell yes. Another big, huge thing. They're going after our great-grandchildren currently. That's what generational studies says. It's not about generation you are. It's about how far in advance they're planning you. So they already have our grandchildren as gamma babies. What is a gamma baby? That's the name they've given our grandchildren. I believe that's how it goes, because there's the alpha. That's the millennials' children. No, we're the betas. That's right, the test subjects. The beta generation is our grandchildren for a majority of us. That's the next rebellious generation, the next generation that is the nomadic or rebellious spirit. And they are called the betas. For beta testings, all I can think of, stick 2 betas in a tank and watch them fight to the death. Like they make all their movies about. Just saying. That's beautiful. So we have to stop thinking about what's happening to us today. We have to start thinking about what is going to happen to our grandchildren in 100 years. We have to look past today to 100 years. So yeah, we might lock up a few, and they might apologize like the controller does. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Let me stay in office. Let me keep my business. You need me. Somebody's got to run the electric company. You need me. And so we're all going to agree to that. And then the fuckers in 100 years are going to be right back here again. We aren't helping our future generations. It's time to go zero. It's time to say no to them, and everybody grow up into adulthood now. Quit being a teenager. Quit letting, other people influence your actions. Anyway, I go back to the video, brainstorming the power and purpose of the teenage human species brain. Hopefully this will just kind of blow your mind. Some of you won't get it and tell me that I'm wasting my breath and whatever. But some people are going to go, fuck, that's amazing, because it is so beautiful. All right, here we go. Back to the show.
Okay, the fourth myth is that, adolescents have to push away from all adults. And while it is true that it is a natural process across all cultures, when you study, for adolescents to push against the adults that gave birth to them and raised them, adolescents in all societies need other adults that they can turn to for guidance who are not their birth parents. But we have this setup in our society that doesn't happen naturally. We don't have.
Okay, do you hear what he's saying there? He's saying that it's an important stage in a human being's life. So remember, we're pulling out our scope and we're saying species. So a human species life, as if we're all one part of the body, right? That's what it says in the Bible. That's what I'm trying to say here. All these things are the same thing. They're all part of the body. And as a whole, this is how we are coming, right? So this is what the big, this next age of Aquarius is. It's a new birth. It's a new you. Same you, new you. out of childhood. So what he's saying is that and during this period, it's really important that kids have a very safe adult in their life that can be a role model for them that's not their parents. So as a generation right now, so as a species, the human beings are broke up into 4 generations. So every 100 years, we grow another year older as our generations all start to develop. And you've seen the development of time over time, where we used to get boo-boos and not give a crap. And now they've coddled the kids. And now you can see with the new generations that they don't want to have a boo-boo. They won't even go outside. They literally have controlled the way we've grown up. Over the generations, they coddled us so that now our species, the human beings that are running things right now, don't want to have a boo-boo, don't want to have their feelings hurt, etc., etc. Now, another amazing thing that has happened is they've made every child in the world, so all the generations that have been in play and are currently in play here during our crisis of 100-year cycle, our 1777 is the last time we've had all of this crap line up the way it's lining up. Isn't that interesting? We're back at 1777. Okay, a lot of patterns are going to be very similar if you go and look at that, because it's happening on many layers historically, including the generational cycles, including a developmental stage. So, what have we been doing? Well, we've put so much fear into parents about the neighbors and their kids being molested or kidnapped or eaten by people. So now we have a whole generation of Code Adams. We were no longer allowing them to spend time alone. They had to go to after school, where they were monitored by one adult per 33 peers. That's kids raising kids for not one generation, but now almost 3 generations. We're 3 generations into kids raising kids, where we've had after school specials with 1 to 2 adults just monitoring. And so all of their peer interaction is coming from the same age group as them. There's no longer, I remember there was an elderly couple in this neighborhood when I was in first grade, so 6, 7 years old. They lived next door to me. They had a grandson our age, so when he was in town visiting, he would play with us. But even when he was gone, they would invite us kids in on hot days for some lemonade and some sandwiches if we wanted. They loved hearing us giggle. I was an only child, so sometimes I might be the only one around. She'd let me come over, and me and maybe their little boy lived across the street. He only had sisters. So they would play board games with us. No grooming, no creepiness, just old people being friendly to the children in the neighborhood because they were their grandson's friends. Okay, this was very common. Hey, Ricky G, So glad to see you. It's good to see you and Smoking. That's rad. You guys came to hang out with me. So even if you thought I was you, Lick, tricked you. But we don't have that going on anymore. And what this man is saying is that it is important in a teen's life to have an adult outside of their parents who can be trusted to go to in case they need it. And we've now created a society where children do not have that ability, which means that as they get older, that's going to impact them not individually, but as a collective. This is how they're evolving you. It's one generation at a time in these cycles. They remove something from us so that through the generation, we don't recognize it's been removed. And now it's detrimental to my development as an adult. Do you see what I'm saying? This is a big deal what they're doing. This isn't about politics and stuff. Or they're targeting our specific behaviors through our children to affect the outcomes when the crisis comes back around for them. It's not an accident that we're the generation in play here. They knew that when they wrote the book. They knew that before we were born. They knew we were going to be a nomadic generation. And the last time we were here, we had a civil war going on. Right? A revolutionary war going on. Revolutions! Heard round the world going on. Listen to all these fucking similarities. It's a fucking woo, Twilight Zone shit, man. Seriously. You can't even, I don't know how anyone can't see it. I just am blown away. I'm not even good at history and stuff. And I'm like, fuck me, that's pretty good. That's really interesting. Then people are sneaky little fuckers. You know what I mean? Anyway, let me keep going. So when they remove that from our children, and now we're all WikiHow, how to control people, make them think it's their idea. And now every adult is creepy. Our children are raised by children, which is why they're all a bunch of look at me's right now. They're not growing up because they're still so busy fighting for attention in the preschool or in the daycare center. They're still crawling around on the floor mats, pulling each other's hair and biting each other. That's what we've got. Because they've never had anyone to show them anything else their entire life. This Gen Zers, truthfully, because millennials had they were kind of their cusper generation here. So our children, direct targets. Now everyone's doing it. And so we all, as parents, did that. 6 weeks, bye-bye, baby, in the daycare, 6 to 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. That baby is being watched by one adult. And it has 2 more friends, if you're lucky and live in a richer area, and they do it that way. I think the minimum for the state is like 5 babies to 1 adult. In a baby room, in a nursery, in a 6-week. How can one woman have 5 babies in her care and give any of them a lengthy enough time to make any connections with people? How do you think that's going to translate when that kid moves to the next room? And now it has to fight for space on the floor and blocks and toys and books and attention and sit in a diaper and get angry and frustrated. How do you think that translates when it moves to the next room in the nursery and it's in the toddler room and it's climbing on things and trying to explore the world with a whole bunch of other kids who throw blocks at him and things? How do you think that translates when it goes into the preschool setting? And now it's trying to, use the science center, but it can't because everybody in the science center is still throwing things at each other or stealing. That's what they start doing. I want that. They're not sharing. It's mine. She's had it longer than me. Jesus. That's what you guys sound like on the YouTube. That's just a rant for a moment. I just have to be honest. Some people. And I don't have anybody in particular in mind in my personal social group at the moment. So if you identify with that, that's your business. I'm just talking about in general, the streams that I see when you take a bird's eye perspective some of the things that we do are so elementary school. They're not even high school yet. We have still not even gotten to 12th grade. 12 years old, 5th grade. We're still in 3rd and 4th grade right now. So many 10 and 11-year-old behaviors, look at me, look at me, look at me, mommy, I'm over here. Watch me go down the slide. Watch me, watch me. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyway, back to, hey, sir, how are you? I'm just blabbering. Well, it's fresh on my mind. So what I'm saying there is you can clearly see that as the generations develop and grow through the stages of time here on our planet in 4th dimension or whatever thing, the ultimate reality, the matrix, whatever you believe this is, I could care less about your whatever word or term you put on it. Okay. We are bound by behavioral laws. And as a species, we would, in fact, as a piece of the body of Christ, we would, in fact, behave the same way. They are using that against us. They're removing adults to give our children when all of us are dead now, because we're all going to be dying. These kids will have they will have grown up with no wise voice in their ear. An entire apocalyptic of wisdom is about to go right out the fucking window, like the Atlantis is what I'm talking about. This is an Atlantis, Aquarius, washing flood over me, rainbow in the sky kind of thing, right? That's what's going on here. And so we're going to lose as a species, because the new species that does survive is going to be so lost. They'll have nothing except those wonderful gods that will come out in costumes from rocks under the ground, who are going to hand them over a tablet. Look, we bring you knowledge. We're the aliens from beyond. And then all of a sudden, the whole fucking thing starts over again. That's what I'm thinking. But, hopefully we can get more people to at least understand whatever reincarnation is. I don't know. But here, maybe it's a growing up instead of having to do it again. Maybe you don't have to go to high school. Maybe you don't have to join the workforce or go to college or whatever. Maybe you don't have to go underground and still live forever. That's what I'm saying. Maybe you don't have to put shit on your face or inject your brain stems with, Kardashian juices to live forever or look pretty. Just saying. Okay, quiet. Shh, Joni, shut up.
Have mentorship by trustworthy adults that we can have, and teachers are very busy in schools, so teachers have a hard time because of the number of kids under their care providing that kind of mentorship, understandably. So where does an adolescent turn for that kind of guidance? It's just a question to keep in mind. Okay, so let's go through what the essence of adolescence is, but before we do this, I wanted to share with you a very short story, which is basically asking the question, why do we even have an adolescent period? So to describe this to you, I'm going to have you picture being not 8, but being 4 years of age. And just imagine this scene. You've had a really wonderful sleep. The sunlight begins to peek through your closed blinds, and your mother comes into your room and opens up the door and comes to you, gives you a kiss on the forehead and says, "Good morning, darling. It's time to get up and go to preschool." So you're gone, and you go, "Mom, thank you. Thanks for getting up." And your mom says, "What would you like for breakfast?" And you go, "I think I'll have some oatmeal." So your mom calls down to your dad, "She'd like some oatmeal this morning." So your dad starts cooking the oatmeal, and you get out of bed, you go to the bathroom, you wash your face, you take off your PJs, you get on your clothes for preschool, you go downstairs. Your dad's made this oatmeal with, of course, walnuts and blueberries, and you're eating your oatmeal. And you have time for a cartoon, your favorite cartoon, before you go to school. Your dad then drives you to preschool, you get out, you play with some blocks, you go down the slide, you goof around with other kids, you're doing finger painting, you take a little rest, you have a snack, you're hearing some stories, you're doing some fun games, and then your dad picks you up, takes you home for lunch. You then play with your dog, you watch some cartoons, you go take a nap, your dad wakes you up, you dance around with some music with him, your mom comes home from work, and then they all make dinner, you eat your dinner, you watch another cartoon, then you're getting tired, you get in the bathtub, they scrub you down, you brush your teeth, you get in bed, they massage you, sing you a song, and read you a story, and you fall off to sleep. Sounds pretty good, huh? Now, not every kid has that experience, but I just want you to imagine that actually most do. And even a lot of spouses try to get that back. So the adolescents are going, what? Why would they do that? Yes. So now picture this. Nature needs a child whose basically first dozen years of life is all about absorbing the world as it is. Nature needs to do something to this child's brain, because for this child to make it in the world, they've got to leave the oatmeal house.
Okay, so do you hear what he's saying there? So I loved his lecture because it is the thesis. All I'm doing is adding this layer of belief systems on top of it. That's it, just putting the two. He says nature needs, God needs a way to grow man up. So nature gave us an ability to have this experience of adolescence, right? During time, right? There's your dimensions. So now think about what he's saying there. Nature needs to do something to humanity, to the species, to the mind, to the self, to the body. The body, we're all one of the body. We're all a representative of the body, the creation of God, so that we'll all grow up. That's what I think this is happening right now. Archmita, that's it. That's what he's about to describe. So beautiful.
You can't have a child just hanging with genetically related people called your parents. You got to get out and mix it up for all sorts of reasons. And so how is nature going to take this 4-year-old and 5-year-old, 6-year-old? What is nature going to do to this child's brain to get this child to not want to be in that oatmeal house situation? So that's what I want you to think about. If you were nature and designing a genetically programmed change that would exist in all adolescents, and we'll talk about human adolescents now, to get them to get out of the house, the den, the cave, what would you do?
This guy is to blame for your boss being so rich while you work tirelessly to pay.
So to understand.
This man, I love the commercial. This man is the reason that you're so poor and your boss is rich. By the way, buy my book or sign up for my course and I'll be rich too. Pyramid bullshit. Notice they always are anyway. Just note to self. So even this man here, Dr. Siegel, is saying that we have these, we have to leave the nest. We have to leave the cave. That's what I think transitioning is, transhumanism is, if you like that word. I think more of the rapture idea fits here. Rapture Watch 23. Jack your body. I was looking for you. I was. I knew it would work. Ulick says that. He says just, he's probably lurking. I sent out my tentacles. My feelers. I was feeling you up, Jack. Oh, man. Okay. I'm having a little bit too much fun up here. All right. Yes, I thought of an idea for, well, Ulick and I thought of a funny little idea, and we needed somebody that might be willing to clip some stuff together for us. And so I was wondering if you would be willing to sit down with me for maybe, I don't know, however long, 15, 30 minutes, 2 hours, who knows? And let me give you some stuff and see if you could clip me together something. I just need bobbleheads on something like a avatar. Okay. So I'll put my email in there. You can email me. .com. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Back to the regulated script. Well, edit that part out. Okay. I'm not going to do that. I don't edit. Okay. Okay, yes, sweet, yay, woo! Okay, on back on the roller coaster. So what he's saying here about this is what I think the revelation is. This is these ideas that I throw around, why we have these terms and why we're all confused, because it's also our sense of dissimilating and compartmentalizing things during adolescence. It's the age that the world starts to get redefined for us. Now, as a species, we've been being controlled through our generational cycles to have certain behaviors removed from us that makes us more meek and more mild. He's going to go into the instinct of the fight, flight, or freeze that happens during the adolescent mind transition. That is fucking brilliant. So if you just are interested in that, stick around or go back and edit me out, or go click on the link and watch them yourself. Better yet. Brilliant what he's saying. And you can see that playing out as humanity is moving towards this new world order, if you will. So I'll shut up now and keep playing.
And this, we're going to review what research has shown. So in general, the way the brain works, because we're going to look now at the brain a lot, is the brain works by, and I'm going to give you a very condensed summary of developmental neuroscience, but here's how it goes. I don't want to shock anybody, but you start out as a sperm and an egg. I hope they teach you that at Gun and Pally. So you start out as a sperm and an egg, and the amazing thing, just to get to the point of the brain, is the two-part genetic information get together to make a whole, which is a very interesting thing. And then what happens is the outer layer of this growing set of cells becomes such that it starts to push inward. So the outer layer is going to become the skin. It's called the ectoderm. It pushes inward. So if you go like this with your hands and put your fingernails, try this out, and then push your fingernails into the middle like that so your second knuckles kiss each other like that. See where your fingernails arrive in the middle? That's going to become the neural tube. So the reason I tell you this is because the nervous system, comprised of neurons, is basically made up of very sophisticated skin cells. That's what a neuron is. And what is the role of the skin? It's the interface of the outside world and the inside world. So the brain is exactly like that. Even though it's inside the body and encased by the skull, with the brain reaching out to all parts of the body, the fact is the nervous system is always about the interface of the outer and the inner. So that's just the beginning of where we're going. Now, two things are going to shape how this nervous system develops. One is genetics, and what regulates the genes called epigenetic controls. We won't get into that now, but basically we've learned that the way neurons find each other and connect up is driven by your genetic inheritance. And the second thing is experience. So I knew that the brain responds to experience even in the womb. So with my two kids, I did an experiment where I would sing them a song through my wife's womb. And then when they came out, I had a neutral party come and watch, and I would sing 4 different songs. And I asked, one was a her, one was him. I asked the neutral parties to guess which song was that child's song in the womb, and they could tell each time. Anyway, now my kids don't let me sing at all. So I'm not saying you should do this experiment, not even in the shower. So this is a bit of a problem. Anyway, but you could show that even at about 7 months of gestation, the ears are working, and you could show that you can learn in the womb. Very interesting issue. So then what happens is you get this baby coming out of the womb, and genes continue to determine how the neurons connect with each other, and then experience, like what happens between a parent and a child, begin to shape how the brain is structured. So you can show that if you are not a particularly caring parent and do particularly outrageous things, like neglecting your child or abusing your child, you can show that the brain will be affected in some pretty negative ways, and the child will feel pretty badly about who he or she is. You can create a state of shame in your child in the first years of life by how you treat that child. Shame is an emotion that feels really heavy in the body. It's like heavy in the chest. It's a nauseous feeling in the belly. And it has a belief that goes along with it. I am defective.
Okay. Did you hear what he's saying about shame and how it can get created? That's what they're doing to the generations. And this is going to play into their future social score agenda, because they're doing exactly the opposite of what this guy is telling us to do, right? To all the teenagers on the planet, to all the kids on the planet, to all the adults on the planet, to all the old people on the planet. Everyone is being treated like this.
So I knew that the brain responds to experience even in the womb. So with my two kids, I did an experiment where I would sing them a song through my wife's womb. And then when they came out, I had a neutral party come and watch, and I would sing 4 different songs. And I asked, one was a her, one was a him. I asked the neutral parties to guess which song was that child's song in the womb, and they could tell each time. Anyway, now my kids don't let me sing at all. So I'm not saying you should do this experiment, not even in the shower. So this is a bit of a problem. Anyway, but you can show that even at about 7 months of gestation, the ears are working, and you can show that you can learn in the womb.
Okay, so this goes along with things like playing music and the frequencies that we're listening to. Now, put that on a generational scale. And what happens as the music has transferred over from classical to now, I don't know, synthesized. So the babies in the womb are hearing these frequencies as they're inside there. This is what starts to feel good and resonate with them. It's almost as if every generation, the music just starts to match, as if they're slowly over time getting us all down to a bass beat. Drop the bass. One beat, like a drum, like a heartbeat almost, which could, I don't know, make you pass out, rapture you, if you will. Just ideas. Those are sci-fi things. You can go along with me or you don't have to. But I'm not wrong in the way that the music is being affected throughout the generations, which means, as he's saying, the babies in the womb, their surroundings outside influence their future selves.
Very interesting issue. So then what happens is you get this baby coming out of the womb, and genes continue to determine how the neurons connect with each other, and then experience, like what happens between a parent and a child, begin to shape how the brain is structured. So you can show that if you are not a particularly caring parent and do particularly outrageous things, like neglecting your child or abusing your child, you can show that the brain will be affected in some pretty negative ways, and the child will feel pretty badly about who he or she is. You can create.
Okay, so we all know that history has taught us that kings and queens and rich people's children are complete brats. There's some reasons why they're brats, and some of it is because they don't get the attachment that comes along with being in a smaller home where so they have this abuse that is happening. We don't see it. Right. But it's narcissistic abuse. And we don't see it because we're jealous, or how can you not feel love? You can buy whatever you want. That's why they have phrases like money can't buy you love, because these kids have never had it. And now we've moved, as you do with, say, a controller narcissist, you start to swap places with them. And so what's begun to happen now is that we've started to become more like them. And we're doing all the neglecting of our children over generations. Think of how we've been doing. I just described how the last 3 generations now have been raised by their peers, not by adults or even age-grouped children. So they're getting no attachment. They have no one. They don't even see their parents for maybe 2 hours in the evening. There's no way bonding can take place in these types of scenarios. So if we do that over generations, what do you think the outcome of that generation as an adult will equal, right? So we're doing exactly what he's saying the problem is. This is how you can have a healthy teenager right here. Be aware of these things. And as a whole world, we're allowing our leaders to do the exact opposite to our children, which equals their slaves. It's a generational thing. I'll keep playing.
A state of shame in your child in the first years of life by how you treat that child. Shame is an emotion that feels really heavy in the body. It's like heavy in the chest. It's a nauseous feeling in the belly. And it has a belief that goes along with it. I am defective. And it's a feeling very different from guilt. Guilt is I've done something wrong, and next time I do that thing, I'll do it better. But if you have a feeling of shame, there's something defective about me, what can you do about that? Nothing. So shame is coupled not only with this heavy feeling like I'm a defective person, but I'm helpless to do something about it. Okay.
Okay, now do you hear that social score that they want to come up with? This future of it. Now, can you imagine? That's what he's saying that equals. When children don't have a healthy adult figure outside their family, their parents, to go to, and then they have the abuse, neglect that's added on top, you end up with shame as adults. That's the kids' future. That's our children, our grandchildren's future. You can see what I'm saying. They're using generations to add so that they can control the future outcomes. So now we have a whole generation of people that feel shame, worthless. They designed it that way. That's why depression and anxiety, but I'm showing you how they've been designing it. Is they're giving us they're doing the very opposite. They're making us all think we need to put our kids in school. We do not. They make us all think we want their stuff. We do not. This is the devil inside, right? So it's the illusion of the outcome. If we don't recognize that it's happening to our kids right now, the future is they will be very easy to control using shame. Shame is the fear you must conquer during your adolescent stage. You don't want to feel, listen to the terms, alienated, embarrassed, humiliated. These all go to the next, which is that ego death. That's why they use them and Masonic circles as rites of passage. You have to have a humiliation rite. That's why they use it in comedy roasts. It's a humiliation ritual, hazing, these types of things. Bill Clinton in the blue dress. Those are all Epstein, Prince Andrew. That was clearly a humiliation ritual. Even if it's only a little scare, some of them just get a Heidi Fleiss mention. Either way, even Martha Stewart had to go through her humiliation ritual with Kmart in order to get to do commercials with the Snoop Dogg. So we all have to do a humiliation ritual at some point. And I think that's the humility, or lying at the feet of Jesus, or in the Old Testament, washing someone's feet was a sign of reverence, of showing your humility. We're supposed to not be, we're supposed to be, what is that term? I can't think of it. Anyway, it's all there. So this shame he's talking about that develops during your adolescent years, if you can't combat it, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass when you're trying to get a job in the next 10 years. I'll go.
And we know that experiences can create the emotion of shame, the belief I'm defective, and the sensation of helplessness. And these are experientially created things that we just know. So the child is growing up and learning all these things about, let's talk about really secure attachment, learning I'm a good person, who I am is fine, I feel joyful about being alive, I love connecting with other people, I have a need, I can reach out to other people, communicate my need. That's called secure attachment. And secure attachment is based on 4 S's. And they're worth memorizing because it's true, not just parent-child relationships, it's true in any relationship. Number 1, first S, is you need to be seen. Seen means not just your body is observed. Seen means the mind beneath behavior is recognized. That is, if I'm crying, my mom doesn't just say, "Stop your crying, Danny," because she saw I was crying. She says, "What are you feeling? What's the mind beneath behavior?" Mind meaning your subjective experience. What are your feelings? What are your thoughts? What's the meaning of that just happened that's creating these tears? So you can call that mind sight. That mother, my mother, sees the mind beneath my behavior, and with that mind sight skill she has, I have the experience of feeling felt. That my inner life is sensed by her, and it gives me this feeling of wholeness. It gives me this feeling of connection with her. That's the first S, seen. The mind that I have is seen by the caregiver who's taking care of me. Does that make sense? Okay. The second S is soothed, S-O-O-T-H-E-D. Soothed. It means when I'm distressed, my mother or my father, my caregiver, is going to sense my distress and make an action to reduce my distress. So if I'm hungry, she may feed me. If I'm cold, she may put a blanket around me. If I'm too hot, she takes the blanket off. If I'm tired, she puts me in the crib for a nap. You know, if I'm lonely, she hangs out with me. All these kinds of things of being soothed when I'm distressed. And what that teaches me too is that what I feel is worthy of being known by somebody else and leads to a behavior that actually makes me feel better.
Okay, so here's where I think this is a lot of what the problem with, say, the moment. Because when we go to look for somebody to soothe us right now, everybody, we go to doctors and we go to gurus and spiritual guides and churches and pastors. We go to symbols. And so those people just want to sell you stuff. So they want to sell you retreats and sell you redemption and sell you holy water and sell you the whole 9 yards, you know, sell you save the children. But in reality, that's just them taking advantage of you desperate for relief of stress. Why? So if as an entire, that's why I have a hard time with people that are consistently trying to sell books. I don't mind that you wrote a book, but and that you want to promote it, but why do you have to have it so expensive? Right? Why does it need to be like that? Why wouldn't it just be free? Or maybe at the cost of the copy, and I would pay for cost. And then you say, well, but then I make this my job. Okay, you know, then travel. Places pay you to come and talk to them. But then who's paying to go to these things? I don't know. Why do we have to pay for anything? That's what I'm just wondering. I'm still somewhat confused by things, but maybe there's a line. So, you know, maybe that's still open for debate in my mind as to where I could place that concept of how appropriate I think self-promotion could be or should be. I struggle with that concept altogether. But anyway, back to the stream. I'm sorry. We'll just edit that. Take that part out. Edit there. Okay. And back. But going back to what he's talking about, human adolescent behavior and the control that our outside environment puts on future outcomes. Oops.
That makes sense. So soothe is what I'm learning in my first months of life, even first years of life.
That's right, the soothe. I'm back on it. So the soothe, we don't have anybody to soothe us. Anybody that we go to soothe us either tries to poison us with medications or cost us money with lengthy treatments or new, holistic movements, new diets, new plans, new binges, new this, new that. That's what the problem is. There is nowhere to go for soothing anymore. You can't even talk to your friends now because they disagree with something about whether or not you should wear a mask on your face. They've removed everybody from our society that could bring us comfort. And they're killing the last people we might have left. Can you imagine the next generations when the millennials are gone? Think of the alphas here. The alpha beta gammas, the next 3 generations. Alphas are being born today. Think of their lives in 20 years. Think of a 5-year-old when they're 25. What is going to happen to them when you're gone and they've only had their peers raising them and they've only had untrustworthy, and their whole life they've been told this whole world is untrustworthy on this, that, and the other. Well, the book tells me what happens to that generation. And I can clearly see it being done right now to them as they're growing up in real time. They're creating an outcome of fearful people who have no trust in anything, who don't have a way to connect with each other because they've never been allowed to properly. They have no way to connect, and there's no elders to guide them, except great AI programs that bring back their parents or bring back the dead. Bring back the dead. I'm not dead yet. I know, we're gonna have you come on our AI and talk to your kids again. That's how they'll get them to hook up to the big whatever they have in mind, because they'll be thirsty for some type of connection, something that reminds them who they are. For all they know, in another 25 years, between all of the earthquakes and all the fires and all of the this and all of the that's and the floods and the this, there's not going to be much left but what's saved on the internet. How attractive will that be to children that have yet to be born? Unbelievable. They get to create a whole new fairy tale with all their own ideas. Maybe L'Oreal becomes Venus. I don't know. These are just thoughts I have when I sleep. Okay, back to the video.
So that's S number 2. So see and sue. The third S is I am safe. And that has 2 parts to it. One is I am not put in harm's way by my parent. So if my parent protects me, and I feel a sense of safety with my parent. But the other is that my parent doesn't terrify me. And if she or he does, she makes a repair of that rupture in the safety that I expect to have. Right? We've already blessed you. And now we'll bless you again.
And that's the crisis. The crisis happens every 100 years. And every so often, that crisis is a crisis above all crises. Maybe it's a revelation. Maybe it's an apocalypse. Maybe it's an extinction period. Maybe it's an ice age, a polar shift. The God's second coming, even. Listen to the language. Coming, puberty, adolescence, the new birth of the mind. He's going to go on to say some really amazing things. You got to start. Do we all agree? There's 4 of you in here. Do you at least know what I'm saying? Even if you don't get it quite yet, do you still understand that I'm saying that the generations absolutely are being controlled to create an outcome because they are in a teenage type state right now, child state. They're Peter Panning us. As Smokin said, they don't want you to grow up. They need to keep you here. When I had my awakening, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, my meltdown, my third eye opening. Okay, whatever it was, right? My come to Jesus, whatever your phrase is. When I had this moment here, I saw... I forgot now. That's so funny. I get so ahead of myself and so excited, right? Which is normal, everybody. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. Stop thinking things are wrong with you. It's normal. Not to mention, we're all being poisoned, for crying out loud. You can't blame yourself for these things. So all this, you're getting older. That's why you're losing things. That's why you're forgetting things. You don't have dementia. You don't have psychosis. It's called middle age. It's called getting older. Embrace it. Laugh at yourself. Have fun with it. Kick the can around until you remember what you were talking about. We've got to give ourselves a break. We keep running over to the doctors ourselves, or poisoning ourselves. WikiHow, how to control people. Make them think it's their idea. Hey, you guys want to poison yourself? No. What if it meant you could live longer? Will live longer? No, could. But if not you, your children could live longer. My children might not want to live longer. I've heard hell described that way, actually, where I can't die and I'm void of God, which means you can't talk to yourself. You can't talk to whatever higher power, gut, chakra in the belly, dragon that lies within, serpent face, that you can't talk to that anymore, because now everyone's talking to that. You're all speaking the same language. Again, having everybody agree. A new world order doesn't have to be a new world order. It could be a new world idea. They keep running across this problem we seem to have where there's this word democracy. Somehow I think means, and I could be wrong, forgive me, but that that if the majority of people agree with something, somehow I must go along. So if we all agree to be ass raped, I must also agree? I don't think so. That's ridiculous. Yeah, but that's why you have a choice. I don't have a choice if I lose, though. That's ridiculous. No, I don't agree with that at all. How about I just say no? And because one person says, no, I don't want you to spray my skies with your shit. Nobody gets to spray their skies with the shit. Right? That's what I'm just trying to say there. It can just be one no in the group. No. Wait a minute. I heard a no back there. Did you say no? Don't say no again. Don't say no. Joni, fuck. I used to hate that kid in school that was that. Sometimes they were my friends because sometimes it was a funny joke we did to each other where we knew somebody hadn't studied for the pop quiz. So we'd walk right in the room and go, hey, teacher, are you going to use that pop quiz? And we'd stare at him and smile. But you knew that kid, he'd be like, you fucker, you're a piece of shit. I just saw what you did there. Oh, man. I got once like that. That's how come I remember. And I also got back like that. That's how come I remember. I can dish out what I take. I can take what we do. But that one kid that did it because they wanted to get everyone in the class. It wasn't a hit. They knew that you guys didn't study because they knew you were out last night over so-and-so and so-and-so's place. And so they walk in and don't forget that pop quiz. And you're like, you're a fucking douche. They're usually not of your tribe. Well, that's kind of now me. Like, that's me now. I'm like, fuck. Hey, we have a pop quiz. Shit. She would, wouldn't she? Yes, I have a hard time saying yes. And I have a really hard time being told I can't do something. Or I must do something, more or less. You must do it. That's why they do that reverse psychology where they go, you can't do that. Where, they pull that thing off to get you to hang out with somebody they want you to. They might say, I really don't think I like that Susie girl. And you're like, oh, you don't. Maybe, or whatever. Maybe, maybe I should I should talk to Susie more. Meanwhile, your mom's been talking to Susie's mom about hooking the two of you up. It's reverse psychology. These kinds of things. Manipulation of the mind is a lot simpler than you think.
So being safe, and this is why I put in books like Parenting from the Inside Out or Mindsight, times when I frighten my kids, and my kids say, why do you put that? You look like such a jerk. And I say, look, many parents do this. The issue is making a repair. So if you're listening to this as a parent, you go, oh my God, I've terrified my kids many times. It's never too late to make a repair. Go back and make a reconnection with your child, with your spouse, whoever it is, and own up to that. Because that is what creates security. So safety is being protected from harm. And if your parent ever terrorizes you, they make a repair and they try to reduce the intensity or the frequency or at all, try to reduce times in the terror.
Okay. So now as a species, we have children that are teenagers right now. And on top of having this experience on their own without a crisis, they're in the middle of a crisis where their parents are being over and underprotected at the same time. They're overprotecting them by locking them in and keeping them safe and putting masks on them and taking them to the doctor, but they're underprotecting them because they're being used as guinea pigs. So they're getting this dose of radiation, if you will, double time right now. So all of this Z generation, alpha generation cuspers, as one group is molding into the other group, they're getting this on double time. Think 9/11 here. What age group was everybody in? How old were you at the time 9/11 happened? How old were you when the time that World War I happened or II happened? How did that equal immigration? How did that equal orphan trains? If the patterns are there. And that's what he's saying here. So we have a generation who's getting this double time. Not only do they get it from their own experience, but they're also getting it during a crisis, which means that's twice the radiation of how this is going to transfer for them as adults when this is what they experienced as teenagers. This is psychology, science, biology 101. How can I create an outcome in the future by affecting this child today? And they're doing it on a species level.
And those three S's, being seen, being soothed, being safe, give you security, the fourth S. Okay, so what we know is that if you've had the good fortune of having that kind of experiences, those kind of experiences, you actually can feel pretty good about who you are. And as you start going to be in preschool, 3, 4, 5, you start reaching out and you have a certain way of regulating your own internal state called self-regulation. You can actually start doing things with other kids. Research has been now going on for about 40 years, where these kids are in their actually mid-40s now, where they've studied them across their whole lifespan. And you can show this is the work of Alan Strofe in the Minnesota study and his colleagues, which basically show that these early experiences shape you, but changing relationship experiences continue to change this way that you feel about yourself. So we're always in a process of emerging. It's never over. And if you had
You hear that? So over a lifetime, these have a wave pattern that play out how you relate with people, how you relate with things. And then that means they can control that outcome in the future.
a really rough time in your early years, you can always repair it to become what I call more integrated. Because in the brain, these 4 S's create integration in the brain, which helps you feel good about yourself, feel connected to other people, and allows you to have what's called resilience. That's what integration of the brain creates. Okay, so the brain is accumulating more and more connections, becoming more and more integrated, and then you're...
So what equals non-resilience? He says that by having these types of healthy connections, you have, during the adolescent years, you end up with an adult who has, I forgot what he just said. What was it? I'll play it again.
Okay, so the brain is accumulating more and more connections, becoming more and more integrated, and then you're 8, like our 8-year-old, you're 9, you're 10, you're 11. Then something happened that was only discovered like about a dozen years ago or so, or maybe a little few more now, 15 years ago, which kind of surprised people. Instead of the brain continuing just to make new connections, which it was doing all this first dozen years of life, driven by both genes and experience. And you may say, well, hold on. How does experience change the connections in the brain? You basically drive energy through connections among the neurons.
Right. Resilience. So what happens now when this generation that is here during the crisis, when they're adults and they haven't gained the understanding or the control over resilience? How much do the elite have power over them now? Do you see what I mean? Surely you see what I mean. They're attacking our children to create future outcomes, to sell them things, possibly New World Order. I don't know what they have in mind. Life forever, guinea pigs, underground bunkers, experiments, just watching them, just for shits and giggles. Let's be real. They have no motive other than.
So it goes very simply, where attention goes, and attention is a process that directs energy and information flow. Where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. It's very simple. Where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. And as you'll see soon, this is how the culture of a society or the culture of a school or the culture of a family can immerse a child in a way that attention is directed in certain ways. For example, like on the destination of get a certain GPA, get a certain grade point average thing done, or get a certain standardized test, or get a certain elite school or something like that. That's a lot of attention going to my worth is dependent on me getting a certain number. It's a very externally directed set of criteria about what success means. So that's all about how you're shaping the brain of that child.
You're shaping the brain of the child. That's how they're shaping the children's brains on the planet right now. They're shaping them so they can control them. He just said it.
And it's shaped by our larger culture, school culture, classroom culture, family culture. So we're going to look at that in just a few moments. So the brain is being like a sponge soaking all this in, but then around 11, 12, 13, not exactly corresponding with puberty, which is, the maturation sexually of the ovaries and sexual characteristics for a female, and the male, the testicles and sexual development there. It's not exactly the same. So you can have early puberty if a child is not in adolescence, and you can have delayed puberty where adolescence has begun before puberty. So it's not the same. Adolescence and puberty, their onset is not the same, but they're roughly the same in terms of timing. What adolescence is marked by is something that kind of shocked people. You have a very significant moment now where you begin what's called the pruning process. You start to remove.
Okay, this happens now. When the mind hits puberty, it begins a pruning process. It starts to prune itself, get rid of the things, keep the things, reconnect the things. Exactly what a reset would be. It starts to build back better, if you will.
Synaptic connections that existed in an 8-year-old now for the 14-year-old are starting to be carved down.
Walden University is all about change. It's time.
The practice you are about to learn is almost never described.
Wow. Why would I do this? When I teach in middle schools and high schools, the kids often go, oh my God, that's kind of freaky. I don't want to be pruning my brain. Stop it. And then they start singing the Peter Pan song, Never, Never Land, because they don't want to grow up. But this is the issue. Growing up means you start specializing your circuitry. This is the power of pruning. It's like if you're growing a garden, right? You put the plants in, they grow all over the place. Well, for that garden to really function well, what do you have to do? You got to prune it, right? So when you do studies like,
do you hear the word depopulation? Yes, sorry, Dr. Siegel, keep going.
Of how an 8-year-old functions in a scanner, and you give them a problem-solving thing, the whole brain is doing a lot of different things. A lot of energy is being used, and they solve the problem, but it's using like everything. You put a 14-year-old there, they very selectively pick out very specialized circuits that solve the problem very efficiently. Big difference between 8 and 14, because the pruning process has begun. So in brain development, we talk about two things: differentiation, things being made different or specialized, and the pruning process is a necessary part of the specialization of the brain. The second thing is linkage, how you connect the now differentiated circuits. And in fact, in the second half of adolescence, so like mid to late teenage years, and then way into the mid to late 20s, you're having myelin formation. Myelin, M-Y-E-L-I-N. It's a healthy sheath that is laid over connected neurons. It allows them essentially to communicate 3,000 times more effectively. It's 100 times faster, the speed of conduction, 30 times shorter, the resting period between firings. So that's 30 times 100, that's 3,000. So that's where you get, it's not just faster, it's more coordinated and balanced with myelin. Myelin is the linkage, pruning is the differentiation. So this process of pruning and myelination is called brain remodeling. So if you have
Brain remodeling, build back better. They're molding and remodeling the species brain. They're doing it when all the planets are all lined up and the energy's just right. Whatever we hear, I'm not saying that this is their hooking. I'm not going sci-fi here. I'm just saying that as a species, like any other human being, we are maturing, and that's what's actually happening. All the sci-fi stuff and the spiritual stuff, everyone else puts on. So from my perspective, I'm a human being growing up into adulthood. I can choose to stay a child and join metaverse if I want to give it a shot, pun intended, or I can choose to just, embrace the great beyond or the sunburst or whatever whatever the fuck the Mother Nature has in store for me. Not live out the apocalypse, maybe, because I've been told that there's going to be an apocalypse and I don't have to be a part of it if I don't want to be. I can leave it. I don't, so that I have to believe there's at least some middle ground somewhere. And so I think that's it. And then I don't even know that it's going to be me that might face that choice. And so it's going to be our children, which is why they're trying so hard to convince them of things and get rid of us, so that when that day comes, they are desperate and choose them over, the biblical, God, for a term there. And there's your Satan story, as far as I'm concerned. And then every time I think about hooking up to the metaverse, I don't know what it's going to be like. Maybe it's great, but the image that comes to my mind is always like this Superman movie where they put the three, aliens or whatever they were. They were people, but they were, whatever. I can't remember their name. They put them in that crystallized, it looked like a piece of glass or a mirror that was just flipping off into space. That's the scene that comes to mind whenever I hear the word metaverse. I just think, oh, and then they just stay in that form like a disc in space until something much larger comes along and vibrates them out or shatters it or whatever, so, maybe it's not an actual piece of glass, but maybe a frequency. And until something's strong enough to break up that metaverse, it stays there and floats around the universe until, the Milky Way runs into Andromeda and maybe they eat each other. Maybe that would do it. Maybe that wouldn't do it. Maybe you'd have to wait till the next pulsar after those, universe eat each other and do all that stuff. That's all super rad. Think about that. Okay. Back to the video.
I had to say what's going on with adolescence. It's completely accurate to say adolescence is a period of brain remodeling. It's a construction site, which is a beautiful thing for reasons you'll see in a moment. Okay, so there are a couple of other things that are going on, but to really understand them, I want to thank the principals of Gunn and Pali High Schools for coming in early today. They came in themselves with the help of the PTSA, and they taped a model of the brain under your chairs for you to actually take home as a handout. So if you reach under your chair and see if you can feel that right there, and then pull out your arm, you'll see attached to your arm is a hand. Did everybody find your handout for today? Okay, good. Let me just check with our principals. May they take these things home with them? Yes, very good. Okay, so take your hand, fold your thumb into the middle, and then fold your fingers over the top. And this brain will be arranged like this in your head. And we're going to review these parts because to really understand adolescent brain remodeling, you need to understand the brain in general. So let's review the parts. Okay, this is up in your, up in your head. So the spinal cord, as well as the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, bring in all the information and energy up from the body, up through the neck, and that's represented in your wrist right here. So we'll just call that the spinal cord, your wrist. Now, if you lift open the top of your brain, which is the cortex, and then lift open the middle, which is your limbic area, the thumb, you'll see the palm area. This palm area is the brain stem. Okay? It is a 300 million year old part of the brain. So it existed in reptiles, we call it the old reptilian brain. And the two big processes it's responsible for are one, it helps regulate thirst and eating and respiratory things and heart rate and stuff like that. So basic bodily functions.
Did you hear what he said? It regulates the basic body functions, like our heartbeats. Beautiful. I love it. I'm just excited. That's all, to both of you. Well, one of you is probably me. I don't know. But nonetheless, I find that fascinating. They know that. They know that's what happens to the brain. And look what they're doing at a time that that's happening to the brain. Look what the language is being used all around us, from the third eye awakening to the reptilian people to he's going to go into the werewolf type. All of these concepts, all of these things equal adolescence, equals that scene and say, I Pet Goat, where they're in the classroom or in the school, and behind the teacher there is the house on fire and the shark and you've got the brain with the lightning in half and the dragon licking one side, the Kundalini spirit, maybe, I don't know, the red dragon, all these different symbols that everybody has put on that supposed video. And that whole school scene is about adolescence. It's about growing up. It's about what happens to the body when we move from elementary school into our double digits. When we're leaving 8 years old and we're moving into these stages. The way that the brain thinks and how it translates into the world.
And the second thing it does is it's responsible for the reactive states of fight, flight, freeze, or faint. So when you are threatened, you literally in your brainstem activate, should I fight back? Should I flee? Should I tighten up my muscles and freeze? Or am I so helpless that I just collapse in a faint? Those 4 Fs. And I say this to you because these reactive states are the basis of basically stress. When we talk about stressed out people or stressed out adolescents or stressed out, I was teaching at Stanford at the medical school last year, and the dean introduced me and said, Cindy, I don't know if you know this, but said, we had a surgeon invite this psychiatrist here. I don't know if you know this, but the internist who was introducing me, they don't like psychiatrists, just so you know. And I thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. I'm going, oh my God, what a way to begin the day with these people. And he goes, but this morning on my desk was the Mayo Clinic report. And let me show you why Dr. Welton did a brilliant thing bringing psychiatrists here. And he reads the report's the saddest thing in the world. 2011 Mayo Clinic report shows that residents in training in hospitals, 46% or so, are burnt out, many of them considering suicide. 2014, after they already knew the 2011 result, 56%. He goes, this is an epidemic. And then we spent the day talking about mind sight, seeing the mind, and what you could do for these residents to reduce their stress, which is what I'm going to talk to you today about in terms of what we do with adolescents these days. Burn.
See, so they are already identifying how the brain responds to get that reaction, depression and this, that, and the other. And so as there's a crisis is happening, whole world is all the fuck stressed out. Our fight, flight, and freeze and faint are all activated. You know what faint is? This is why I love that this can be connected to regardless of what you believe. Fainting is basically like an out-of-body, near-death, lucid experience. So when somebody has these experiences, fainting is actually the entire process. You stop, you can't breathe. You're, in a typical faint, you wake right up and whoa, what just happened? Maybe the sight of blood or whatever. But regardless, you have a spiritual experience during it, right? So you have some type of, either amnesia or you might have had an out of body. There's lots of research, even at Stanford, one of the most famous, where they just made people faint to describe what happens to them, what they see, they experience during a faint. So we have our fight, flight, freeze, and faint happening right now. And I think that fainting is what's happening to a lot of people when they say they're waking up or they're becoming aware. They're fainting. The option at that moment that kind of seems the safest, because if you fight, you're going to look like an idiot, right? You don't even know what you're fighting yet. If you run away, you don't even know what the heck you're running away from. Maybe you just faint and the universe just tells you, hey, something's up, dude. And you come back and you go, oh my God, something's up. So I feel like that's kind of along the lines of where I allow the rapture type argument to lie, because to me, that's a rapture. Somebody has, whoa, a faint episode. Maybe they ate some mushrooms or had some bad pizza, but they had an experience there, meditation, whatever it took. That's those who come back, but they can't get stuck. They can't get stuck because then they just feed off of everyone. They just become part of the problem. So when he's describing all of the fears that come out right here, this is a time in our life that as a human being in our adolescence, these four are actively being, in other words, all of the connections that need to be in place for us to use these four fear responsive correctly in the future are getting wired right now. Adolescence is the time that this part of the brain is being wired, and we are letting everyone else wire our children to react. And this is the wiring that they're getting. So that's what's happening in the minds of the children.
Burnout and stress and suicidal thinking is not something limited to the adolescent period. These are residents just across the street at Stanford Hospital and hospitals all around this country. I have been giving lectures this year to the national meetings of the Veterinarians Association. 3,000 veterinarians in one group, 2,000 veterinarians in another group, equine veterinarians and the general veterinarians. They have the highest suicide rate now of any profession. So I had to interview a bunch of veterinarians to figure out, why are these veterinarians killing themselves? It's very serious. And even when I had a workshop afterwards with hundreds of veterinarians, not the thousands in the big room, but just a smaller thing, like a room like this size, a number of them took the microphone and were talking about why they were thinking of killing themselves. So I won't get into that here, but all I'm telling you is that stress is a serious thing across the lifespan. And when you feel completely helpless, suicide actually seems like it's a choice you should make that makes you feel empowered.
So that's why en masse, that's what's being created. So as the generations grow up with the same repeated cycle of, outside control, environmental control, and then you've got the genetic generational trauma being passed down through the genes and the expressions thereof, which go along with the mutations from the food and the vaccinations that everyone is given. You end up with a child or an entire generation or two or three or four. Maybe we didn't even need the fourth one because we are allowed to skip one this time. Why? Because it's in the pattern. The generational pattern says that we have a skipping of a generation right here, a civic one that's supposed to bring order. They just disappeared. The last time we had this happen was when? 1776, when we had a whole alignment, when we had this, when we had that. All makes sense. And now they've got everybody and they're ready for this next phase of whatever, where's my spudgy? What phase are we on now? Are we still waiting for Seattle? Have the Seahawks landed? This kind of stuff. Here's what's happening. This guy's telling you what the controllers are doing to our children. That's what the public school systems, the Navy and religion and all of that was set to design, to create over generations, over several generation cycles, a human species population that is submissive, broken, depressed, angry, at a point of crisis, at a point of popping, so they can have their way with you.
You're getting rid of your pain. My teacher who started the American Suicide Prevention Service, Ed Schneidman, called it psych ache. Achy in the mind. Psyche is a synonym for soul, intellect, spirit, and mind. There's an ache that you only sense with mind sight, seeing the mind of another person. And that's what these physicians are suffering. That's what these veterinarians are suffering. And that's what some of our high school students suffer for reasons that don't have to exist. So the brain is pruning, specializing, it's myelinating and all this stuff. And sadly, increased stress increases pruning, and you can prune too much. And then it makes you hard to regulate your emotions. So we're going to go over how these systems work together. And we're talking about the brainstem now. But let's now go to the next level of the brain, the limbic area, because that's what changes the most. At birth, your brainstem is pretty well formed. The limbic area, let's say, is about halfway formed. And it develops in the first 3 years of life in a big way, but it continues to be molded throughout the lifespan. During adolescence, it changes in a very big way. So I'm going to give you the 5 functions of the limbic area, and we're going to think about how these change in adolescence. And I'm going to actually ask the adolescents in the room. Is it okay if I ask you a question? You and all your colleagues. Adolescents, raise your hand. Let me just see where you guys are. Okay, so many of you are down here. So I may ask you a question just collectively. I'm not going to put any of you on the spot. But just get ready, calm your brainstem down. You don't need to fight back. You don't need to flee. You don't need to freeze. You don't need to faint. So you can go bring yourself from a reactive state to a receptive state as we go over this. In fact, before we go through the limbic 5 functions, let's do a little exercise where I'm going to teach you what it feels like to be in the reactive threat state, and then what it's like to enter the receptive responsive state. Okay? So put your notes down if you're taking notes. I'm going to say a word. I'm going to repeat it several times. And then I'm going to pause. Then I'm going to say another word and repeat it several times. And I'm going to pause and do a few more things. Okay, you ready? So all I'm asking you to do is be aware of whatever arises as it arises. Just be, it's called mindful awareness, means you don't have to have judgment about it. You don't have to have expectations about it. Just be aware of what happens as it happens. There's a spaciousness of consciousness that allows you to be aware of it, but you may start feeling intense things, and that's fine. Okay, everybody ready? No. 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 Yes. 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 Now I invite you to take a nice deep breath. And now try putting one hand on your chest and one hand on your abdomen. Just put some gentle pressure. Just close your eyes, just see how that feels. And now just reverse it, so the hand on your chest goes to your abdomen, the one on your abdomen goes to your chest. Put some gentle pressure, see how that feels. And now put it in whichever configuration is most comforting for you, left or right on top, whatever works for you. Put some gentle pressure. Now let's just take a moment, just as your hands are like that, just sense your breath wherever you feel it most naturally, your nostrils, air coming in and out. Could be your abdomen moving out and in with the breath, your chest rising and falling. Just sense the breath.
Big name in EVs, trucks and vans, rentals, 5-letter word. Hertz, let's go!
This planet's our only home, but we're not treating it that way. Greenwashing speeches and pledges are simply not enough. We can't save the planet by being shy about it. So we're going all in. This
Now take a bit of a deeper and more intentional breath. You can let that go and let your eyes come open if they're closed. And if you want, you can leave your hands there or put them down. Let's just do a quick survey. How many felt that putting a hand on your chest and a hand on your abdomen, whichever way, was comforting in some way? Raise your hand really high, really, really high. Okay, so it's the majority of people. How many felt right on top was the most comforting? Raise your hand really high. And left on top. Okay, so interesting. Okay, so if anyone is interested in getting a doctoral degree, I've now done this with probably 5,000 people, and it's always the same. It's about a quarter left on top, 3/4 right on top. It's usually the majority find it comforting. No one knows why. And you have a built-in control group, so easy to get a PhD. Okay, someone should go and do it and then call me and let me know what you find. Okay, now let's just do a quick survey. How many people found it was different how you felt when I said no versus when I said yes? Raise your hand if there was a difference. Okay, so I'm going to just go over here and just shout out some words on this side. What did no, we'll start with no. What did no feel like? Just shout out a word. I'll repeat it. Tight, scary, what's that? Angry, hurtful, rejecting, what's that? Frustrating, percussive, restricting, painful, dense, limiting, shame, mean, annoying, judgmental, bad. Okay, wasn't very pleasant.
Okay, so all of those are the things that is being tossed on everybody right now. You're being told no. You've got the restricting, the grounding. You can't post this. You can't do that. You can't buy this, but buy that. You can only shop here. You can't go there. They have so many restrictions right now. A lot of no's are going on right now. Well, as we move through stages, we have a few kind of powerful stages we go through. And the power of no is always a big push. So we get no, 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 the minute we become mobile. So the minute a baby starts moving on its own, the world of no's come in a flood. And the more, expansive they become, the more no's show up for them. So when they reach preschool and they go into that I am stage at 5 and 6, where they identify as themselves and they can now catch fish by themselves and cook the fish by themselves, right? Then they have an I am moment. They now have the ability to work within the no's. They've now worked out how to make a no a yes. They've worked out why not? I can't do it. What can I do? So that's a stage of development. And then it happens again so it's a rebellious stage. That's why they have it the terrible twos. That's because that's when that bubble peaks and the no's are just too much and they're just monsters. They're testing every no. They want to know every no. What no equals a yes? What yes equals a no? How far can I push the no's? That's all toddler is. The toddler laws. If it was mine, it's still mine. If it looks like mine, it's mine. I can take it from you. I can push you over with it. No, 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 no. They live in a world of no's, learning about, no, don't touch that. That's hot. Even these things, the whole world is a no. And then that rebellious spirit that's inside them causes them to challenge the whole world on no at 2, right? They can run. That you can't catch them. They have mastered to a degree. And then that peak there then slowly, slides back down into a more regulated child, which shows up right as they enter their elementary school years and go into school, preschool, right? So 4, 5, 6, the last little 3, so you get it. And then they have that I am moment, and then they move through their life again. They've mastered, right? They're 33, at least for the moment. They've got 33 degrees, 3 years, 6 years. Here I am. And then the next time that happens comes at the end of elementary school, when we come back into our rebellious period, which usually starts to take place when we're in double digits. And we start recognizing and getting tired of the abuse that we're experiencing, be it from a bully at school or a brother or sister at home or a parent or something like that. And that's why all of our films right there have that double digit age in them, because they have to go to the next stage. They have to transition through those tween years to have a growth moment into the adolescent stage officially, right? And so this is that rite of passage, or you know, your bar mitzvah would be there, 12, 13 crossover. It's that 13th floor. It's a stage that we go through, and it's a transitional stage we go through as we're moving from the 10, 12 into the double or the teen. It's why they call it the tween, the in between, or, you know, the missing floor, because that's what that is. That's that age crossover, that cocooning that takes place in the adolescent mind as it moves from one stage to another. And then I got sidetracked because I looked away at what I was looking at a minute ago when I was thinking, which is a thing we do when we're free thinking, as I like to call it. What is that? Free thought, open thought. I do describe behaviors. Okay, let me go back. Yes, the adolescent mind as it's going from its tween stages. I get excited on the 13th. That's like my number. So that's why I can go crazy there. I see it. I go, woo, hey, 13. Okay. But when we're going in that, in between that zone, and we're moving from the one stage to the other, if we don't have a way of challenging our fear and stepping up to whoever is bullying us, we don't pass that rite of passage. We don't conquer the wolf, right? We don't come back with the treasure, or, you know, whatever that might be represented for you throughout the history of whatever belief system that you fall under. Then you're going to not be able to handle that the next go around. You're seen as weak by the tribe. And that's what we're creating right now. We're having a very weak, humans going through their developmental stages on the planet. Generations are not being allowed at the moment. This is our time at the moment to rebel. That's why I always have the idea that they wanted to delay or stunt us in some way. You know, when I channel, you know, aliens or angels or whoever, whatever, you know, I could just call it looking in that corner of the library. That's all. That's how I can do it. I don't like the idea of somebody else outside myself helping me along the way, right? How very human of me to think that I'm smart enough to figure this out without some green beings' help. So, but that's okay if others need that, I suppose. I'm okay with that. They do. I don't. And that's one of the arguments I have for aliens, is because, well, what makes you think okay, so if the odds are there's that many, you know, planets that have more intelligent life, then what are the odds that we're the right one? Well, the same that one's the right one, or that one's the right one. In other words, the odds are the same. I could be the most intelligent. You don't know that. You're just assuming that because you look out there and you see lots of them. But you don't realize that if you turned around, you'd be in that group from another planet going, look, there's lots of them. And that's the theory of dimensional thinking and alternate realities. That's what that means. It means that you take and flip it around and go, oh my God, you're just one of a million. There's someone over there going, what are your odds, Steve, that planet out there has life on it? Oh, I don't know, about 1 billion to 1. Probably, more likely, it's one of them out there. Well, you're one of them out there, which means that you have just as much of a likelihood of being the most intelligent planet in the galaxy as any of the rest of them do. So why would I assume that I'm not the smartest? Of course I'm going to assume I'm the smartest. I'm going into my adulthood. I feel invincible. I feel like I know everything. I'm a teenager and a know-it-all. Why would I even think that somebody could be smarter than me? That's business 101. Hey, Zara, good to see you. So I think that's my argument there. All right, I'm going back to the video now because I'll probably embarrass myself again. Then I won't want to leave these things up because I go off on tangents. So, but I'm practicing, so fuck off. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
What that likely is doing is it's activated through all sorts of systems, but in part a threat state. You heard different aspects of fight, flight, freeze, and even faint, which is can be seen as the shame state. I'm helpless to do anything. Now let's go through yes. Just shout out some things with yes. What did yes feel like? Comforting, soothing, accepting, relaxing, empowering, warm, loving. Was that open, affirming? Was that relief, joyful? Was it calming and freeing? Okay. Okay, so there he clearly shows you what the difference between the no's and the yeses are like. And this guy's a doctor here, right? He knows this. He knows what let's just say teenagers need. He knows what the generation needs. The generation needs this. And if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So what our controllers have done is, instead of putting on, positive television, shows about gardening, shows about, home improvements, which they have those, but they're all attached to Sears. I'm talking about real programming, not trying to get me to buy wood. How can I make this out of crap? Right? Without selling me things. And you go, okay, Joni, well, you can do that on YouTube. Okay. I know I can do it on my own. I'm talking about our leaders, the ones that seem to have our best interest at heart. They know this, and they're not helping me. They're selling me more fear of they're going to get in a fight with Russia, and they're going to end up in the parking lot near my car, fist fighting over some Chinese dollar, and Hunter Biden's going to be trying to fill me up in the locker room. Or is that Epstein? It's that kind of stuff they're selling me right now. They're not trying to help me. It should be in every house. Radio stations everywhere should be devoting a call-in hour. So along with you selling me things, you could be calming my fears. You could be honest with us. You could be telling us what you really know about the sun. You could be telling us what you really know about polar shifts. You could be telling us what we could really do to survive, teaching us to be okay with death, teaching us to be okay with what's out there after, sharing each other's experiencing, letting everyone know that there isn't anything that, that keeps you here. You can go on and live forever in other ways, whatever that might mean to you. None of that is taking place. All I'm hearing is you're doomed and underground bunk, more just control, more entrapment. Now get you underground. That's entrapping me. I just said I don't like people touching me. I certainly don't want to be locked in some underground bunker with them. That's insane. I would rather eat shit and die, honestly. That's what I'm thinking. So that's not for everyone. I'm not saying you can't do that. You could do that. That's not for everyone. And so why not have other things for all of the people? Hang on a minute. Okay. Yes. But we're hey, Michelle, it's good to see you. It's very hard to teach everybody to be okay with death. Nobody wants to be okay with death. But you hear what this guy's saying. Well, you will in a second. And he's telling us what we can do to alleviate stress in our adolescent time to create a mature adult. And we're doing the exact opposite to at least the generation of high schoolers and teenagers and young children at the moment. So this is the young children's experience. So not only are the teenagers going through their adolescent stage and the elementary kids going through their normal adolescent stage, the normal idea that they got to fight the bully, the normal idea at that tween stage that they have to stand up for themselves, even if it means that they have to group together. Well,
I'll stand with you. You know, he can't punch us both. That concept has to be here. And if we don't accomplish it here in this rebellious stage of ours, during this crisis of ours, during this next lockdown where they want to impose more and more restrictions on us, if we don't have a pop moment where we go, no, you're not taking that body, as Will Wheaton says, or no, you're not taking One Eye Willie's gold from, you know, the Goonies, or whatever your reference to that moment is, that, you know, the Sandlot. No, you're not taking over our field. No, you're not going to hit me again. No, you're not going to tell me what to do. That's a rite of passage, and every kid goes through it. Karate Kid, The Outsiders. It's all there. It's all there. And so what happens if we don't allow our kids to experience the moment where they get to stand up to the bully, and instead we tell them to not just shake hands, but maybe hug and kiss and hang out with, and creepy crawly libraries everywhere. I don't know. People who make you feel uncomfortable. I'm not even saying they're bad people. I'm telling you that if you are dressed in a Barney suit, and you know that at that birthday party, there is a child there that's having a moment, and you continue to hang around them, you cause them trauma, you're an ass as a Barney, okay? You're a Barney with rebel. That's what you are. You should be able to sense that someone in that space feels uncomfortable. If you are void of the ability to understand other people's hula hoop of space and other people's perceptual vision hula hoop of space, there is something wrong with you. Seriously, you should be the one. I shouldn't be at the doctor. You should be at the doctor because you have an odd, peculiar behavior where you don't feel like you could just do whatever you want, and so what if it bothers someone? Then you're impeding on me. Now the problem comes is if we want to make a conflict out of it. I don't want to make a conflict out of it, so I'll leave. The bookstores will be overrun with the type of people that's who they allow, because they don't have a problem there. That's their tribe. They would rather have lose you as a customer than lose them as a customer. That's what it says there. Lose you as a friend, then lose them as a friend. And in which case, they've made the choice for you. Sayonara. Okay, back to my video.
One thing this exercise teaches us is the brain has two states it gets into. If you're talking the big picture, one is a reactive state that comes with no, and one is a receptive state that comes with yes. So my next parenting book with Tina Bryson is actually called The Yes Brain, because it's how do you parent? It's not just parent, how do you live life really, where you encourage a yes brain state. Because so much of what happens, unfortunately, in school is a no brain state. I don't mean it's a no brainer. I mean it's literally creating this reactive state. You know, like I work with people from one school in LA, and the mission there is to get to the top 5 elite colleges. Well, only about maybe 8 or 9% of the kids in that school will get there, and the rest of them are considered failures by the administration of that school. And I know that for a fact. And those kids feel that. That's a no-brain school. Can you imagine? You say 90% of you are going to feel inadequate, no matter what you do, and a failure. What kind of system does that to people? So that's that's the no-brain state that's created, right? You feel horrible. You feel just even this little exercise. I'm not even your dad saying you can't have ice cream. I'm just saying no harshly, right? But it activates the brainstem that way. Okay, so now the brainstem sits beneath the limbic area. Now we're going to talk about the limbic area because it's the major thing that changes in adolescence. So let's go through the 5 functions of the limbic area. And I want you to think about adolescence. I'm going to ask the adolescents in the room just to reflect on it. And I'm not putting any of you on the spot. You don't have to say things if you don't want to. But if you're inspired, just say, something that relates to it if you want to. Okay? So it's not like you have to. It's just an invitation, not an expectation. Is that good? Okay. So smiles. That's good. All right. The first thing is the limbic area, which has regions. You may have heard about the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus. The limbic area, your thumb area here, first of all, you'd have a left and right thumb for perfect model. Most of us just have one thumb. And I say that because I used to not add that in. And someone said, you know, I saw someone at a gas station who had two thumbs, so you really need to respect those people. And I said, you're absolutely right. And 2 meetings later, when I started saying 2 thumbs, I went to a gas station and there was a person with 2 thumbs. I'm serious. So, okay. But anyway, so there's a left and right limbic area and there's a left and right cortex, but the brainstem is just singular. Okay. So, number 1, the limbic area, the thumb region, works with the brainstem and the body, meaning your muscles, your heart, your intestines, send all the signals up from the body to the brainstem, to the limbic area to do function number 1, create emotion. So when we say you want to...
Okay, so what he just described was how the Kundalini snake comes up through the body when you're going through your adolescent, when you're having your great awakening. That's what's happening to everyone. We're not awakening, we're growing up. You're feeling what adolescence feels like en masse. That's what's happening. That's why a lot of people are having the same experiences no matter where they are in the world, because it wouldn't matter anywhere in the world. You would be experiencing this if you were of this age. The whole world is going through its adolescent stage where it's starting to wake up the mind, the third eye, the Kundalini snake, or the, you know, whatever you call it, your rite of passage, your transfer into the next dimension, your spiritual transformation, 14th dimension, whatever you guys come up with. That's why it's happening to everyone. It just means that everyone is experiencing a very similar thing across the planet. Would we not agree? And whenever everyone is experiencing something across the planet, I must assume that it is connected. Because the last time that I knew that all 12-month-old babies, regardless of where they are in the world, all take a step roughly around the same time. So I must assume that's also the case here, that we are doing this all at the same time. We're walking into our adolescence. We're all taking our first step at the same time, just like we did through our epochs, right? We're all experiencing adolescence at the same time. That's what I'm saying. Oh, I have to take that off for a minute. I think he does an excellent job at showing that right there. We all started walking. We all started doing this. This wasn't limited to one group of humans. This was the whole world went through this stage here. And then we went through this stage. And then we had our preschool years and another, and we go through these stages, these cycles within cycles. And now there's a cycle of, a big one where it's not just the epochs that line up, but another set that lines up that puts you in a cycle of what, 6? Is that not the Neo? You finished 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your school age. And then Neo does something different. He doesn't pick his friends like he would have all these years. No. He picks what's her face? Trinity. He picks Trinity because that's a representation of adolescence. That's why he picks her, the Trinity, 2 become 3 as they move into young adult stage. That's why 5 Neos. That's what happens. It's right there. Neo represents adolescence, a stage of moving from us. We've conquered the us. Now it's about the me, and then it's about the her. That's how that works. Me, you, us. Me, you, us. Me, you, us. That's how we learn about the world. First, it's a me stage. Then it's all about the other person stage. And then it's about us together stage. So beautiful. I just love it. I find human behavior so freaking beautiful. Sorry. I just absolutely love it. It's so clear why we do these things. Okay, keep going.
identify the emotion that's going on in a person, you're talking about this way the body is coming up into the brain. And then the limbic area, brainstem, and body are pushing signals up into the cortex where we develop awareness, as you'll see. Many people, not only adolescents, but many adults, don't have much awareness of their internal bodily world or the brainstem world. They don't have what's called self-awareness. And if you don't have self-awareness, you can't calm your interior state because...
Now, do you hear the language? Oops. Oops, no, not that one. Just this one. Do you hear the language there? So he's even talking in the language that we're hearing outside right now. That's why I said it is us, the whole group of us, all of us as a species is experiencing this developmental stage. That's what take all the science fiction, take all the spirituality. If that doesn't appeal to you, I'm not saying it's there, but that's just another idea of it. Here's an idea that doesn't involve those things, that says I, as a human being, a species, a mammal on this Mother Earth planet, I am going through an adolescent stage of development that in another person's mind looks like time, a dimensional plane of existence, a fifth dimensional thinking, a second plane of thinking, an awakening. I can see another layer outside of here. Doesn't that all sound familiar? That is what adolescence is. And since that's happening to all of us, then the question is, do the controllers know what I am saying to you, what you now know? Or do they not? Are they acting with intent to destroy the adolescent or the human mind like some demonic monster they are predicted to be? Or is this all just, well, incompetence because they are just doing what they do, controllers? And maybe, even though they like to dress up like the devil on Halloween, don't actually understand how much like him they really are. Deep down, they think, I'm the devil, ha ha. But they're part of the program. They have to be the devil. They can't not be the devil. I have to have a hero who's going to be the bad guy. And that's where I think they get into the discussions on whether or not we chose this life. I chose this role. I don't think you do. Maybe you have some say, but I'm not sure. Did I just pick that I want to be the rebellious character? Was that what I chose? And then that guy chose to be the monster? Is that his character he chose? I'm not sure I believe those things. I think that's more kind of luck of the draw. But once you're in the cycle, you're in the cycle. So once you're there, you're there. So maybe you do. I'll allow for the argument, or at least not argument. I'll allow for the placement there. The concept sounds cool enough. I think it'd be rad. I'm not against it. I like it. But I don't know that I would go that way. I don't know if I'd officially say things like that. Or by just doing what they do, they're just following, the script themselves and still don't know thy ultimate self. Still don't know. They see themselves as teachers, but in reality, they're only hall monitors and have no power or control over anyone until we say, fuck you, which is what we're supposed to do here.
You're literally living above your limbic area, as we'll talk about soon. Most of what happens in schools and even in families, teachers used to live up in your cortex and not be aware of stuff that happens in your limbic area, your brainstem, and your body. So we're just going to use the word self-awareness for that. The lack of self-awareness leads to a lack of the ability to calm and soothe one's own emotions. And studies show, for example, when parents teach kids, they say, oh, little Danny, let's say I fall down, I hurt myself, and my mom comes over. She could say, get up. That's one option. She could say, oh my God, you hurt, it's so terrible, I can't believe how terrible it is. Oh my God, you fell, boy, that's so horrible. That's another option. Or she could say, bless you, I shouldn't bless you, I should regulate myself. Or she could say, Oh, that must have been so scary for you to fall over that tricycle that your brother left there. Let me help you up. That must feel so scary to have that blood coming out of your knee right now or something like that. Right now, what did she do in that case? She used what's called mental state language. She used words in her linguistic communication, like linguistic is language, where she said, Danny, you may have been surprised. Danny, you may be scared. Danny, it may be painful. So in her relationship with me, she's teaching me to be aware that I have an internal state. Number two, she's teaching me my internal state can be known by someone else. And number three, she's teaching me to name it, to tame it. That if I can name my internal state, and we did studies at UCLA to prove this, you actually can calm the storms inside. Now,
Okay. So do you see how that is what a parent would be normally doing to their children? There was a time that's possibly how we all treated our children. We would have probably done all that. And so he's saying that if I can do that to my child early on, then I create a healthy adult. But if I remove that from my child, which is what we've done as generations have gone on now, we've removed that now. They're all now going to someone else because for that information, and they're charging them. So we could have stayed home as moms and parents or, whatever, dads. We could have stayed on, kept work in the fields and been a family. And our kids would have gotten an emotional adult who's capable of taking care of themselves. Or we could have bought what we did and we got them all in school. We thought we were doing right. And meanwhile, our kids were getting none of those things. And so now here we sit. And so when society won't give you any special attention, what starts to happen? It makes me think of the whole, I want to be special club. Once nobody's special, everybody's special, nobody's special. It comes with the idea that I have cancer, or my mother has cancer, or, I've got this tumor, or I'm having some scans done, or, well, I'm on medication, or I have this weird genetic thing, or I have this weird, look at me, look at me, look at me, and I'm special, I'm special. And so many people who always felt like they didn't belong anywhere start to fall into places now. Cults. Look, there's a cult of medicines. Who's on more medicines? Who gets more scans? Who has more things wrong with them? Because they all have the same thing. So, it's called, one-uppers disease. They have that on top. That's a comorbidity for some people. You know who they are. And then that was such a big turnoff for me when I was seeking, others to share, what I discovered about myself. That's how come I identified the behavior, because I'd never noticed it before, en masse like that, where even within the group of people, it's still there. It's the same behavior, only on a smaller scale. They're always going to be arguing over, when I was in like my tween years, okay, so my double digits. So that's 8th grade. That's right around that 7th, 8th grade as you're moving into your high school years. And so this is middle late 80s. No, middle 80s. Sorry, I had to think, oh no, that's much sooner than okay. Anyway, so our school was sponsoring a big dance, right? And I didn't want to go. I didn't give a fuck about going to any dance, right? But another nerd friend that was my friend, his mom wanted him to go. And so his parents paid for us to take a limo. And he says, invite your friends and go to the dance in a limo. So, we get this news the day before, so now, I don't have a dress. I'm like, I don't have or the day of, like, this is in the day, and I don't have a dress. So, I come home from school and I call my mom and I say, look, Mom, Steve's allowing us, Mom got us a limo to go to the dance tonight, and I need a dress. Stay with me on this story. You'll see where I'm going. And my mom goes, I can't get home in time and then bring you back out to pick out a dress and then get you there she don't know how she's going to pull this crap off, right? But at the time, she works at an antique store because my mom is good with things like that. And she goes, I have an idea. So she goes around the shop and she pulls out 3 different dresses that are vintage prom dresses, and brings them home for me to try on. Okay. And so out of them, I picked the one that looks the best. It wasn't my favorite, but I didn't have any boobs. And so I couldn't wear that one because you could just see right down the top. That would have been stupid. So I picked this other one and it was absolutely hideous. I will agree. And there are pictures, and no, I'm not sharing. Okay. But nonetheless, I picked this dress and it had lots, it was that kind of, we also thought it would work because the kind of style. So my mom was also picked, there's lots of dresses in the shop. It was a big shop, but these are the ones she thought might be the prettiest, right? So I picked this one and I go and we get to so me and my friend are there. She's in basically a real quick dress as well. She might have had hers picked out. And then, our friend, and I think there were 5 of us all together. And the girls come up. This is a scene from a movie, except it's not. All right. That's the stupidity. My whole existence has been scenes in movies. It's just, they happen to me. And then later on, I've thought so many times that somebody steals my life and puts it in art form. I'm sure I'm not the only one. That's just one of my little things I come up with because it just blows my mind verbatim sometimes how creepy that is for me. Anyway, one of those supernatural synchronicities. So we walk into the dance and here are the girls, the clique, right? The popular kids, whatever. And, they've got the braces and they've got the hair and the whole thing. And, oh, you guys decided to come after all. Cause at school we were like, we wouldn't go to your fucking dance. We didn't say the F word, but this was just, we wouldn't go to your dance. We're not going to go to that dance. And oh, you're not, you can't come. So you don't, you're too poor, whatever stupid thing they'd come up with, whatever. You're too ugly. Whatever the fuck they do. Right. They do. And so we get there and they're, where'd you get your dress? And my dress was actually kind of neat. So, because at that time, you have to remember at that time, that's Pretty in Pink time. That's the time of the very unique type dress. And so the idea that something, kind of that's unusual that they didn't see in the prom stores, right? So they come right up and they want to check out my, say their little thing, snotty thing. And then later in the dance, I'm in the bathroom. So cut scene. And we're in the bathroom and we walk in on them in the bathroom. And so they're having a conversation. This is all absolutely factually true. To the best of my knowledge, I solemnly swear. Okay. And she goes, I can hear them talking and we're walking towards, the stalls or whatever. It's just you and your friends, what you do. You hold your piss until you can walk in there together. And you're hearing them talk. And so you're getting this kind of secondary sound bite, like a fly in the wall. And they see you as an insignificant dust. So it wasn't like we had a rivalry. It wasn't like that. It wasn't that moment. It was just, they didn't even give a fuck about us. So we weren't nothing. It's just the way they were with everyone. And they're in the bathroom and say Susie, Stacy, here's the names, Tiffany and Stacy. Tiffany says, where'd you get your dress? I got mine at so-and-so. And she's like, well, I got mine at so-and-so. And then she goes, and remember, this is the 80s. This is Valley Girl shit. This is Madonna with the gloves and shit, right? So I'm in Arizona. All right. This is Valley girl. This is total California. That's what Phoenix was. We might as well all been the same. That's how they expressed itself. If you saw movies from California, you might as well have been seeing them filmed in Phoenix. And they go, and she goes, well, how many layers is yours? And she goes, I don't know. And they lift it up and they start counting the layers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this is the queen bee blonde bitch, right? This is the middle. This is the bitch in the center. That's who the Heather, the red, red tied Heather. That's who I'm listening to. And she's counting and she goes, well, mine has 8. My dress has 8 layers. And then she proceeds to lift up her dress as I'm washing my hands and count her 8 layers. So that as me and my friend are walking out, she goes, how many layers is your dress? And we just kept walking out the bathroom door like we didn't hear her. I don't know how many layers. That's what my friend and I went outside. We looked at each other and rolled our eyes like, what the heck? We both had a moment of adolescence where we didn't feel inadequate. We felt like, what was wrong with them? What was wrong with you? Why do you have these thoughts? Why are you in the bathroom? Heather, that's why when that movie Heathers came out, I just like, oh my God, this is my fucking life. What? I've seen this before. I've seen this film before. The age of Aquarius, the age of adolescence, the second coming, the puberty, the dropping of the gonads, the seed, the atom, and the Eve. It's all the reptilian brain, the growing and the development, your bar mitzvah, your bat mitzvah, your shmita. You're growing up. This isn't a wake up, it's a grow up. If they're saying wake up, they're hypnotizing you. Hypnotist uses the term wake up. That's after they've implanted seeds of nefarious purposes into your mind. Don't wake up. Grow up. Grow up. That's what everybody's got to do. And now I'm thinking of Stand By Me, which is one of my perfect references for this age group because that film is about a coming of age. But remember, he says, I don't grow up. I don't throw up. I grow up. And then your mama turns around and makes you lick it up or something like that. We had some little catchy phrase thing they say in the film. And then when we were 10, we were saying it, I don't grow up, I throw up. And when your mama comes around, she licks it up. We had yo mama jokes in the 70s. Come on. So it's that idea. It's there. It's there. It's there. It's there. It's there. And we have delayed it, or we are hindering it at the moment with our children's development, and what is happening to them today is going to alter their future and how they respond in the future. That's what I am saying. Back to the video.
If I were raised by parents who just says, get up, what does that teach me about anything? Nothing. Or if my mother becomes so distressed, she falls down, she's crying, oh, she's aching with her leg, then there's not enough differentiation in that relationship. She's too much like me, and that doesn't give me enough space. So as parents, we need to offer these things called reflective dialogues to teach children about their own emotional state, to give them self-awareness. Okay, so that's number 1. Now, in adolescence, do you feel like your awareness of yourself is changing from when you were 8? This shrugs. Okay. All right. So this is something just to think about, and just think about whether it could be changing. And when we were all adolescents, just remember if that changed at all. Okay. Number 2, the limbic area works with the brainstem to create what's called motivation. It drives our behavior. Motivation is an internal state combined with the limbic area and the brainstem. And there are all sorts of ways. We have a book in our series. I edited a series of books called the series on interpersonal neurobiology. And one of those books is called The Archaeology of Mind, and it reviews these brainstem limbic motivational circuits by Jaak Panksepp. Is his name, Jaak Panksepp. Anyway, the bottom line is you have these deep motivational drives that push your behavior, right? Now, we have an 8-year-old here Would anyone guess that when this 8-year-old is 14, what motivates him will be different from when he's 8? Anybody think that's true? Yeah, because motivation changes in a huge way in adolescence, and teachers need to realize that so they can tune into what actually motivates an adolescent. So that's number 2, motivation. Number 3, evaluation. This limbic area has something called appraisal. Appraisal is where the limbic area is saying, is this thing happening right now important enough for me to allocate attentional resources? So is it important or not? That's step 1. Step 2 of evaluation, after I've appraised it's important, is I say, hey, is this important thing I'm paying attention to? Is it good or is it bad? That's called hedonic tone. That's number 2. Number 3, it says, if it's good, how do I get more of it? And if it's bad, how do I get less of it? That's the appraisal circuit. So
Okay, so what he's talking about, exactly what we're hearing en masse. Again, I'm trying to make a big connection, so I'm going to keep showing. Every time he says something here about how the adolescent brain starts to develop, and I can show that happening on mass scale, I'm going to pause it. And what he's describing here is exactly that. He's talking about how the brain starts to get rid of things that doesn't need. It starts looking for things that bring it pleasure, and it starts dismissing things that bring it displeasure, right? That's the separation from the nagging mom or the always in control dad, never making you feel like you're good enough, or the bully that's always making you feel like you're less than. That's what the mind starts to do there. It starts to decide what it's going to get rid of and what it wants to attract, right? And we see that en masse. Now look what is attracting. So as kids are pulling away, what is getting their attention these days? What are they disconnecting the world from? What are they using to separate themselves from the bullshit of their parents they hear fighting, to their parents they hear talking or about the end of the world, from their neighbors, from the teachers and the masks and the shots and the doctors and the friends having the same problems? Where do they go to release or dissociate that outside stress away? They go right online, most of them. They go right online and they start diving into spirituality. A lot more of the newer generations are getting into Zen states of meditation and sex magic and tarot reading and the spirituality movement. Another movement that's sucking a bunch of these lost children or nomadic children during this crisis is the spirituality movement, the greenie movement, right? The protesting movement. They've got a movement for all your bowels as you're trying to come into your gut that wants to fight, flight, or freeze or faint, which means that your body decides in those states of anxiety to get rid of what it doesn't need. And that oftentimes means your bowels. So that's why animals shit before they take off fucking running or run at the same time that they're, as if it just shoots them off. They have to get rid of anything that's going to be in the way. The body just thinks instantly, anything and everything that could be in the way. That's why oftentimes in bullying type scenarios, you have the kid that pisses their pants when they scare him in the locker room. It's because he's that scared. You scared him so much. You initiated his fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. And so his body said, out it goes. You often hear people too talk about shitting their pants. They were so scared. That's what that means. So he's describing exactly what that. And now you know why poop emojis and urine was so popular for a while in our culture. It was that childish poopy jokes. It's all connected. Here's your symbols, signs, and speaking in tongues. I get all your pretty little pentagrams, but let me show you some new pentagrams made up of behaviors. Do you see the connections? I see it. Anyway, hello. Poop, anyone? And then there's a big connection between sheep and goats and their poop, and why their poop is a symbol, why those animals have the symbol that they do. Well, a key component is their poop. It's their behavior. It's what it creates. See, sheep poop and stamp on it and stay low to the ground, keep their heads down, and just follow each other. And because they just do that, they mash their feces into the grass, which is what creates those super green, yummy, lush Garden of Eden meadows. But they're susceptible to falling off of stuff or following the wrong shepherd or attacked by dogs. But if left alone, this is what they can accomplish. And then they're just a circle of beautiful grass. Literally, they just circle around, and as long as it rains and nothing interferes, sheep could just be growing and growing and growing. They could take over the world. It's that concept there. But goats are different. Goats look up. They want to go up. They don't want to be down. They like to go into briery places. It's their behavior. Their poop is more solid. And it sits there and decomposes in a different way that works in that environment. And they can't have slippery. They got to have little nuggets. I did like a whole stream on that. I know it sounds kind of gross, but it's actually was very interesting because we use these symbols of the sheep and the goat and the Garden of Eden and the lamb and the shepherd. And we all think it's supposed to mean XYZ, but I'm wondering, hey, could it mean ABC instead? Could it be that if you say, you know, there's two sides to every sheep story. There is a happily ever after at some point. That kind of idea. I don't know. Anyway, back to.
Let's remember back when we were adolescents, and the adolescents in the room. Would you say that the way you were evaluating things being important or not changed when you're 14 versus when you're 8? Anybody think it changed? No, that's so amazing. Okay, well, I remember it changed in a big way. And this evaluation change, we'll see in a moment, has something called hyper-rational thinking, which we'll get into soon. Okay, that's number 3. Number 4 is memory. Memory changed a lot. These areas govern factual memory that's laid down. It starts building on what's called autobiographical memory. And so adolescents have a richer kind of sense of who they are and start asking questions about who they are in life. Why are they here? Important existential questions like that.
Okay, do you hear what he's saying there? And then I'm going to end this. And I don't know if I'll come back with more probably, but who knows what I'll do. What we have going on right now. This is the era, this is the age of the diaries, and we have vlogging, right? The VJ. You know, we have all of these behaviors. Think of yourself in this time period. Okay. And so we're showing these, and then our parents are reading your diary. That's what's happening with everything we put on our thoughts out like this. You know, somebody's reading it, even if it's not for, even if AI isn't. I don't think that the AI gives 5 fucks about Joni Rotten, honestly. I'm not a threat to anybody, okay? Honestly, I have no fear that, you know, somebody, oh my God, she's found the secret. You know, I don't think that. The fear is there. Somebody's listening to you. Who knows who that is? And if you're not okay with your identity, like he's saying, this is where your identity gets challenged. Who are you right here? Hey, T. Are you capable of standing up for yourself here? Are you just going to go run and hide and put your headphones on and close the curtains and the windows and act like you don't hear the person being murdered out in the street? Pretend you're not part of that? You know, do you band together? Do you just up and move out of the city altogether and go, fuck, that ain't my problem. I'm going to the country. You know, these are the things that we learn about ourselves, because everything that I know about Joni Rotten as a 49-year-old woman is because I've gone back and remembered like that moment in the bathroom with the bitches in the dresses. And I've tore that memory apart. I've sat in the bathroom, in the stall, listening to them. I sat there looking at the tile on the floor thinking, what is going on in her mind? Slow motion. But you don't think about that till you get older, and suddenly you're listening to something and you're going, oh my God, that made me flashback. I had a flashback. That's what acid did for me back in the 80s, is it gave me flashbacks when I'm 45 and going back in time and sitting there in the bathroom stall listening to some woman tell me about how many layers she had, while these people are telling me about how many pills they're taking, or how many different illnesses they have, or how many different doctors they have, how many different, labels they have, how many different degrees they have. Here's Johnny. He's been seen on the Late Late Show and Jodi's Rotten Show. And over there, he's interviewed with this guy. And he's that guy. I was an MC for comedy more than I was anything else, right? Which means that's my job, was to get up and introduce and give the big, hey, next on stage is. You probably have seen him here and there. Maybe you've seen this motherfucker everywhere. It's the same thing. Anyway, go back and rewind and listen to this on super fast speed if you just come in, and if you want to hear my thoughts about as a species, as I'm working it out in my brain. One of these days, I'm going to have my presentation on fucking Bang Point. And I'm going to be like, that's it, bitches. Ha. But I just practice occasionally. It's kind of like the ukulele. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out. And say bye. Throw links in if there's somewhere fun to go. Here's my thesis, or my idea. That's what I think's happening. I can't help it. We're teenagers. That's Aquarius, the age of Aquarius. Adolescent stage, the fifth Neo. He picks the girl. He picks the love interest. He picks the V, the power of the V. That's it. And then we have that last 6 years that complete our 666. And now we are a man. Count the number of a beast, and his number will be 666. And it is the number of a man. A man. A means a series of things in the dictionary. That's what a means. It's the beginning of a series of things. It's the new ancestral line of what is to come. Every man that turns 18 goes out into the world now, has conquered his fears. He is a man. 6, 12, 18. That's 3 stages of I am a man. And now I have to prove myself as a man to be 24. And now I've moved on. I'm having a family, and I've provided. And that's the next stage. And that's what we're looking at. That's the mark of the beast. It's us. It's us hitting our adolescent years. It's us standing up to the bully. It's us saying, no, devil, you cannot have control over me. I don't allow you here. You have no power over me. I don't give a fuck what your little paper says. You have no power over me, mom and dad. I don't give a fuck what that says on that birth certificate, dad. I don't care that it says you're my dad. I am emancipating from you. Guess what age you can emancipate from your parents? You should have learned this just recently because some kids did it in order to get a scholarship for the Lucy Juicy. But it's right there in your double digits. You're 12 and 13. You can emancipate from your parents. Do you know who emancipated from her parents? Drew Barrymore, Firestarter. Remember? She went into court. She showed that you could emancipate from your parents. I also was somebody who emancipated from my parents. I didn't have to go to court or nothing, though. My parents said, all right, that's fair. Go on. But on to present a case. No, I didn't. But the idea is that that's where that comes in. And so unless you recognize that you can say no to whatever control, it doesn't matter if I'm on a piece of paper, their child. At 13, I'm not their property. I'm now as big as the person who is bullying me. That's what puberty does. You have a growth spurt and you shoot up as high as the giant. So you're as high as the giant. Now the giant doesn't seem so big anymore. Another thing that's interesting about, say, David and Goliath is that he's far away with a slingshot, which means that Goliath, from his visual perspective, was not a giant. He would have been very small. And as the kids in the hall showed me, I could take my fingers and hold them in front of my eye and go, I crush you, crush, crush, crush. So I must believe that that played into the confidence. Imagine them as if they're tiny. Imagine them as if they're in their underpants or in some embarrassing, humiliating position, and you could just stomp on them with your shoe. That illusion alone could create an outcome where he hits him with a rock. The visuals further away. There's lots of things in these fairy tales that we don't look at. Do you know what I'm saying? All right, I'm heading out. Let me see what the chat says. Zara says, I feel that. I've kept my son in the same school far away, even though we have moved. It was beneficial to the little one, or so I thought. Attachments are important. Yes. Having things in their life stay somewhat stable in a very unstable world is a very good lesson we can teach our kids right now. So instead of adding to the instability in our own homes and fighting over homework and chores and, whether or not you're going to be able to play ball or go to a dance, we should be, positively making our home a fun place with games and exciting things, less, maybe sharing records. Do you know what the number one song was when I was born, kind of thing? Or maybe what was the number one song this day, in 1950? Do these kinds of fun things as families. Use internet in that way. And for that, I'm out. I will see you later. Bye, everybody.